My name is Stanley Davis, and this is my testimony.
This is my testimony. This is my testimony of what was done for me. This is my testimony. I've got a story to tell to the nation.
About 16 years ago, close to this date, February 2nd or 3rd, 16 years ago, I was asleep in my bed and something felt funny on my neck. So I jumped out of the bed and turned the light on, and my neck had swelled up. So I said to my wife, "Look at my neck. I think we need to go to the emergency room." So it was a nice size swelling. So we went to the emergency room and they took us straight in and started examining me, checking this, that, and another, and asking me questions. And I actually ran into a friend of mine who worked at the hospital while I was in the waiting room. And she looked at me and said, "Uh, you probably have cancer." And I said, "Oh, no, that sort of just went in one ear and out the other." After the examination, they gave me some antibiotics that would make the swelling go down. So they scheduled a lot of x-rays, all different type of things. And we started having a dispute over my insurance. Time was going on. And so I decided to check out Old Faithful, the Veterans Administration. And I met a doctor named Jeffrey Wolf. He was the Veterans Administration in Baltimore is connected to the University of Maryland Hospital, and they share physicians. So Dr. Wolf was the head of ENT at the Veterans Administration, but he was a part of the University of Maryland. And he came, he examined me, took some biopsies, and he did some testing. And so they were going to call me in a day or so and let me know the results. So they called me back in, and I had the consultation with Dr. Wolf. And when I sat down with him, he had this very concerned and worried look on his face. And he said, "You have cancer and you're stage 4." And I said, and I never knew too much about cancer at that time. So stage 4 didn't mean anything to me. What went through my mind was, well, how many stages are there? 20. And later on, I found out that stage 5 would have been my memorial service or funeral. So Dr. Wolf was so concerned, he set up a plan. This was in probably by then this was April, and they scheduled surgery for May. I had the surgery. They took out the cancer was on my tonsils, so they removed 53 lymph nodes from my neck and also my two tonsils. And out of the 53 lymph nodes, three of them were cancerous. So I began surgery. I began treatment, which was 7 weeks, 5 days a week of radiation treatment. And I had 3 bouts of chemotherapy, one at the beginning of the radiation, one in the middle of the radiation, and one at the end of the radiation treatments. So initially they said, well, we want to put a feeding tube in your stomach. Before that, I had to go to the dentist to have my mouth checked out for cavities, or because something like that would create problems with the treatment of radiation. Dr. Wolf told me what was going to happen. They wanted to prep me for a feeding tube. I didn't think I needed one at the time because I was in good shape, basically good shape. and I was ready to take on this cancer or whatever, what the treatment I had to go through. So I said, I don't need a feeding tube. And they said, okay, that's fine. I was going to be, I thought I was going to be able to endure it. The radiation took my taste buds away totally. So when I ate something, I had no appetite. I couldn't even force, I didn't want to, felt like I wanted to force anything in me because I was feeling sick. I decided right then, and now I know why I needed this feeding tube. So they put an emergency tube in me, and through the treatment, that's how I fed myself. And during that time, I actually my during the treatment, my weight never went down. In fact, it went up. I gained weight for that. Now this was the radiation was during the summer, so it ended in August. So I was about at that time I was ready to eat something. I was ready to get back to eating. But what happens with the treatments, especially radiation, it damages a lot of good what you have along with killing the cancer. And what it did was damage my esophagus because nothing was going down. If I was able to eat, I would have been able to keep the esophagus open. But because nothing was going in my mouth and down my throat, my esophagus sort of melted closed. So when I was ready to eat myself, I tried to eat. I would put something in my mouth. I would try to drink water. And if you our windpipe is right next to the esophagus. And so when we try to drink something and we cough up, some drops have went into our windpipe, and that's why we cough. By the grace of God, I'm glad my windpipe wasn't damaged like my esophagus. So what they had to do was I stayed on the feeding tube. I was trying to be ready for Thanksgiving dinner, and this was in August, but I stayed on that feeding tube for over a year. And then they were gonna make an attempt to open it. And how they did that was to pull the tube out, run a tube with an umbrella attachment on the end of it, and they would push it all the way up to the top of the esophagus and open it up. So I had to have that done about 3 times before I knew that this was going to be it. And now my esophagus is like this, and and it has like a shelf in it. So I can eat food, but a lot of times it gets stuck on that shelf. So I have to eat small amounts, and I'm unable to swallow a capsule, a large capsule. Smaller capsules I can swallow. A larger capsule, I would have to open it up and whatever's inside, put it in food or drink in order to take it. So that's my situation right now. But we're talking about 16 years ago. I've been cancer free. But during that period between after the surgery, it damaged my teeth. One by one, they fell out. When you hear people talking about tooth pain, I went through that whole gamut with basically all of my teeth, the worst pain you could experience. Sometimes it was so excruciating, it would throw me on the floor. Sometimes I would have eat something and a tooth would come out. It would just come out. And so eventually I lost them all. But that's what you have to go through. But thank God I'm still here and I'm healthy now, and it's been an adjustment because of the dissection of my throat. A lot of this side is numb as I feel it right now. It's still numb, but it's something I've adjusted to. But I was getting spasms on the side, and I still get the spasms. They are seasonal, believe it or not. When the seasons change, mainly from spring to summer and summer to fall, I will get spasms on the side. Through the years, those spasms now have come on my good side. So once in a while, I get a little spasm over here on my right. But it's about adjusting to life after surgery, after nearly death-ending surgery. And right now, I'm physically okay as much as I can be after having stage 4 cancer. Well, my mother-in-law at the time, she said, I hope it's not cancer before the diagnosis. And I said, cancer? I didn't even imagine such a cancer. I just thought maybe, I didn't know what to think, but didn't think I had cancer. And after the diagnosis, actually as a Christian, I was probably more well prepared if I was not a relational Christian. And so for me, it was just let's get this fight going. Let's get this battle going. But I will say this during the treatment and through the year early on, I did have my personal funeral thoughts that, I was going, I didn't think I was going to make it. For the most part, I was strong, but being human, I still felt, well, this might be the end of the line. So, but when I heard cancer, it didn't bother me as much because I never thought about having cancer before. And I never thought I would have cancer. We all think nothing will happen to us, and that's where I was. I'm just assuming it was my faith because it wasn't something that worked on me 24/7. I would have the thought for a moment, an hour or so, and then it would go on, it would go away. I just proceeded with my treatment and dealing with everything, and I just thought that I was going to recover. I would have my pity parties, but they wouldn't last for a day for days. Just for maybe an hour, for a moment, just thinking about who would be at my funeral and the good things they would say about me. But yeah, when I had those moments, they didn't last long, and I attribute it to my faith in Jesus Christ. Besides that, I was alone in the battle. Well, I think it frightens a lot of people. And my wife, when I first got the diagnosis, she started welling up with tears. I said, "Hey, wait a minute." I said, I can't be dealing with comforting you. I'm going to do this thing. You had to wipe those tears away. I didn't need anyone else pitying me. I needed you to be strong also. I mean, because I'm going through this, but you have to be strong because I don't have the strength to go through this and care for you. Now, my brother was there like a brother you want your brother to be there. So anytime my wife couldn't make it, my brother was there. So between those two, and at the time, my mother was elderly, and so she kept in touch. My brother and I, we would talk a lot, and he said, "Well, now you have a real good testimony." And so I said, "Yes." And so because we're a faith-based family, it wasn't that difficult. But although, as I said, I did have my pity parties. Not many, but I did have them. I did two interviews through the a local station in Baltimore. It was the Health Watch stations, one in Baltimore City and one in Washington, D.C. And I did an interview for both of them about the cancer. HPV. When I look back, they gave me the most important thing that any human being can use in life, and that's a relationship with God, a relationship with Jesus. And because of that, I was more nonchalant about it than my doctor. With my energy, and I believe, and faith, and the treatment that I received, I think that's actually what brought me through. I believe my faith really played a very important role in my recovery because I see others who are so downtrodden with, and my faith, it's something I found out about faith in Jesus, the faith period. You think you can't be touched by anything. I know some people who have a mental health problem. And I used to think, why do they have mental health problems when they are Christians? Now, I realize that mental health can overtake people with faith, because we're human. But I'm just telling you how strong I thought faith was in Jesus. When we go through life, we know that we're just here temporarily. We're in a foreign land. This is not where we're supposed to be. And that's why we all know that we're going to leave one day or another. But between the time you come and the time you leave, that dash, you make the best of it. And I know that my faith in Jesus Christ is what carries me daily. And I talk to him daily. And you listen to him through his scriptures, and the Holy Spirit will say something in your ear. You just have to know who's talking to you. That's basically what it is. You're going to have a good spirit, and then you're going to have a bad spirit that's talking to you. And the bad spirit is always going to be negative. There's no love in the bad spirit. But that's what the good spirit is about, love. And if you attach your wagon to that good spirit, you'll be able to assist yourself in healing. A positive attitude is very, very important on helping yourself heal. If you're negative and down all the time, you know that physically. You feel it physically when you're down or when you're up. So being up is going to help you more so than being down. And so you just have to have the faith. We're going to leave here one day or another, but while you're here, you need to fight. You need to fight.
This is my testimony. This is my testimony of what was done for me. This is my testimony. I've got a story to tell to the nation.